Welcome to Section 2 and Lesson 3 of the Brewers Anonymous BJCP training program. In this section, we are taking a look at exams, ranks, and points. And this is one of those lessons that the information on here isn't necessarily going to be on the exams. It's about the judging exam. We're going to take a look at the judging exam in detail. So if you already are familiar with the judging exam and you kind of want to get back to the information that these exams will cover, you can probably skip this lesson, but I do encourage you to watch it to get a full understanding of what goes into the judging exam. So, all right, let's get started. This is going to be rather short compared to the entrance exam detail lessons because this exam is essentially one thing. It's judging 6 beers in 90 minutes. That is 15 minutes of beer. That's about the amount of time on the average that it takes me to get through a beer on a flight that I'm judging in a real-world situation. I have heard it commented that that time goes by very quick during the exam, and that is true. You do have the weight of passing the exam on you, the added pressure, and everything just building up to probably make that feel a lot shorter than it actually is. But I do think that's a fair amount of time to judge a beer. And it's also good that we know that because as we practice and as we do our score sheets, we have a time limit to make sure we don't exceed, or at least a goal. When we first start out, it may take us longer, but when we start practicing for the actual judging exam, we know we need to get each beer done in a 15-minute average. The entire exam is done on handwritten score sheets. And if you've just started judging within the past year or two, this might be a new idea to you. Most judging has moved to a digital platform. The exam has not, at least not yet. I can see this one day going to a digital format, but at the time of the recording of this lesson, the BJCP has not made any mention in the slightest of moving this exam to a digital format. And if you've not done a flight of handwritten score sheets or it's been a while, this is a bit of a physical test as well. If you're not sure about that, just try writing 6 score sheets back to back in 90 minutes and see how you fare. You may be fine, or you may cramp up on that first score sheet. Now, when it comes to the judging exam, add to that the tension and stress of the exam, and training for this from a physical standpoint becomes just as important as anything else we're going to cover. The exam uses the BJCP Beer Examination score sheet version of the score sheets, and I'll show you the difference here. This is a typical score sheet if you do a handwritten score sheet. This is the version you will use in the exam, and the biggest difference is that left-hand side where all the off-flavor descriptions are gone, which is why off-flavors and flaws are going to be a large portion of the training in this course so that you know what they are. So if you end up marking these in the exam beer that you're judging, that you're marking the correct flaw. You will not know the styles you are judging ahead of time. The only thing you really will know is that they'll be selected from categories 1 through 26. Nothing above category 26 is used on these judging exams. So this cuts down a little bit the number of categories you're going to know really well for this exam. Not a lot, but still, it does help. It narrows down a little bit of what you're going to need to prepare for when you're ready to take this exam. You will need to judge each beer as a style it is announced as and presented. Regardless of what you may think right away after sampling the beer of what it might be, you have to judge it as it's presented. Same thing applies in a competition as well. If someone miscategorizes their beer or mislabels their beer, you still will need to judge it as the beer it's entered as. And in the exam, you can have doctored samples. By that, I mean the exam coordinator might take an example of one of the styles that's listed in the BJCP guidelines and add to it one of those off-flavor components like we will be using for our off-flavor sensory trainings. They also may flat out switch styles. They may give you a blonde ale and tell you it's an American IPA and have you judge it as an American IPA, although you may recognize it right away as not being an American IPA in several different ways. That is actually what they're looking to find out that you can do. So again, judge it as it's presented, not as what you think it is. And the biggest thing to know about this exam is that it is closed book. There will be no style guidelines provided. You will not be able to have your phone with you. You will not be able to have a smartwatch. You won't be able to have any kind of calculator that does anything beyond addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. In fact, they may even be provided to make sure that they are only capable of doing that. You will have to know a lot about each style and the sub-styles from categories 1 through 26 so that you have a basis for what you're about to judge those beers on. Grading for this exam, it is a 100-point scale, and you will receive a score at the end of this. In fact, that score is essential into your progress and ranking in the BJCP program. 20 points of that score are allotted to scoring accuracy, and 80 points are allocated to completeness. The basic methodology of this is that everyone starts with 100 points, and then points are deducted along the way based on a few criteria, which we'll discuss now. In the scoring accuracy, one thing we haven't talked about is that there's 12 exam takers total in this. No more than that. There might be less. There always could be some dropouts or they don't fill a class, but there's no more than 12 exam takers. There's always proctors, usually 2, sometimes 3, but mostly 2, and they're nationally ranked or higher. There may also be an exception to this for someone that has many years of experience and a lot of experience points. If they are, but not nationally ranked, if they're approved by I believe the exam director for the BJCP, I might have the title wrong, they may not have the national rank, but they do have the experience. But typically it's nationally ranked or higher. Then all scores are entered into an exam grading form. Then your exam score for scoring accuracy is calculated using a variance table. Not going to get into the details of that. That's a whole nother subject, and it even isn't really part of any 3 of the exam. It's a separate process in the BJCP. There is a scoring process that they use, and there are different levels and titles of scorers as well. It really doesn't have a lot to do with these initial certifications that we're training for, but I just wanted to give you that information in regards to how these scores are tallied. Then in completeness, there are 4 subcategories to completeness, each starting with 20 points. First one is perception. That's recognizing flaws in aroma, appearance, flavor, and mouthfeel. Along with that is descriptive ability. That's describing the intensity and characteristics of aroma, appearance, flavor, and mouthfeel again. Along with that, the use of proper terminology when you're describing that. Now, the word intensity tends to invoke, it has to be something really strong. Intensity is an entire scale, so if the intensity is low, you'll want to mark that too. You just don't want to mark the strongest, most prominent flavors. You want to make sure you cover everything, especially when it has something to do with that style. If that style is expecting a very strong hop aroma and hop flavor and it's not there, make sure you note that it's very low or whatever its descriptor is. Feedback, providing useful feedback. Explain adjustments that would bring the beer closer to style, and constructive and consistent comments. These are things we're going to talk about a lot as we're practicing for this particular exam and working on our score sheets and building our skills. So all of these are going to be covered extensively in this course. Completeness and communication. Complete score sheet. Don't miss anything. Any of the fields that are required for this score sheet, make sure you fill in. Ignoring them are just going to cost you points. Well-organized and legible comments. Legible being the big thing on here. Handwriting varies. I know mine is a terrible example of handwriting. Maybe yours is a much better example, but whatever comments you write, they have to be, well, I say legible. If you write them but no one can read them, that's certainly going to cost you points. Constructive and consistent comments, and making sure that the stylistic accuracy, technical merit, and intangibles checkboxes are marked. That's a portion of the score sheet that's on both the actual judging sheets and it's also in the examination version of the score sheets. And we will make sure that is covered thoroughly throughout this program as well, so you don't forget about it when it comes to your judging exam. There is a cost to this exam. For a non-BJCP member, the price is $40. For a BJCP member, the price is $15. You don't become a BJCP member until you pass this exam. Now, you might be asking, well, once I pass this exam, why would I take this exam again for $15 as a member? Well, you might want to improve your score. Let's say you pass this exam with a score that gets you into the rank of certified judge. And as you continue to judge more beers or maybe get involved with a club that wants to expand their judging program, you may want to continue your journey and move on to national or above. Well, you'll need to improve your score. So you can take this exam again at a reduced price and try to improve that score of 80 or over to sit for the written exam and pursue your national and higher ranks. The key to passing this exam, in my opinion, is practice, practice, practice. Then practice some more, then continue to practice until the last day of the test. And I completely practice what I preach on that, because here is a photo of my hotel room the night before taking my judging exam. I had to drive up to the Panhandle. I'm located in Central Florida. I had to drive to the Panhandle of Florida to take my exam, so I stayed overnight a couple of nights. This is the last thing I did before settling in and going to bed and waking up for the exam the next morning. I judged 6 beers to get in that last minute practice for this exam. So one last word on this. It's a little strange. It may sound strange, I should say. This is not the written exam. Now, I'm making this slide for a purpose, because this, more times than not, is called the written exam by mistake. And I think that's because compared to the entrance exam, which is all online, this judging exam is entirely writing. So I think it's mistakenly called the written exam because of the amount of writing that this second exam requires. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because if you see a BJCP written exam announced and shared somewhere on social media or something like that, somewhere online, and it's in an area that you're willing to go to take it, don't blow off that announcement because it says written exam. There's a very good chance they're referring to the judging exam and calling it the written exam by mistake. So take that extra moment to check out what they're talking about and make sure you're not passing up an opportunity to take this exam. It could be the written exam. They might be calling it the right thing, but just double check and make sure they're not talking about the judging exam, because I have seen that happen in the past. It was well after I've needed to take my exam, but it did make me wonder how many people have kind of skipped over that because it was accidentally called the wrong thing. All right, that is it for the details of the judging exam. So let's move on to the next lesson.